Hey guys, by now I hope you watched the video about the show of shows. I did part 1. Now I'm going to show you 6 of the guns that I brought back part 2. I showed you some guns on part 1. I got 6 more on part 2, and then I'll have part 3 tomorrow. I try to break it up a little bit because I know some of you get tired of looking at me and listening to me and you just shut me off. So come on over and I'll show you some more really cool guns that I picked up at the gun show. Okay, as you can see, I have a couple rigs here, then a Japanese rig, and a couple other pistols here, and of course a Liberator, which I'll talk a little more about. Let's take a look at this one first. This is pretty cool because this comes from World War I. World War I holsters do not have the stitching across here. As you can see, that's the stitching that you see in World War II. So this is a World War I gun. World War II will usually have markings here. This actually says 1935. We'll get to that next. This does not have markings here. So in World War I, you can have them here. You can have them here, which is where they are. And you can also have it right here. So the markings are varied. Now, you can see here the unit, maker, and 1916. The tool is imperial proofed. That's just a crown and a letter. Usually it's a D or an S. And quite honestly, they look very much the same because it just looks like a squiggle. But that isn't a original tool from World War I that went to the military. You can see this is double dated. There's 1915. Evidently was made and not issued, and then issued in 1916. Let's take a look at the gun itself. Beautiful holster, but what's amazing about this gun, I'll just get right to the bottom line. The spoiler alert, this is the spoiler. This gun, over 100 years old, well over 100 years old, used in war, has 2 matching magazines. Now the color, the wood color is a little bit different, and you may not be able to get this, but it's 1560. So 2 matching magazines. This darker one has a plus sign, and again, some people will say, well, the Germans would never have used a light color and a dark color. Remember, they were making these for war, not for collectors, so they didn't get all obsessed about the color of the magazine. I believe these are 2 original matching magazines. And 1560, I think I said, and there it is right there, 1560. You can even see a little bit of halo there, and definitely see halos here. It's in the D block. So this is original finish, and look at the look how nice that is. Straw small parts, absolutely beautiful. Look at this side, even better. Here's those. Remember those squiggly marks? That's crown S, crown D, crown something. And I get a magnifying glass to figure it out, but there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 proofs. For the Imperial German Army, 1918 actually. So this holster was a little bit early, but came with the gun. And the grips do match the gun, and the diamonds are very sharp. It's like snagging my gloves, they're so sharp. So this was probably issued to the Army and never used. So it sat in the desk drawer. This went to a cook or a clerk. And people don't like to say that. They like to say this came from a dead SS officer, but in fact, lo and behold, there were no dead SS officers in World War I. Now we're going to jump to World War II. You see the black holster, you see the stitching here. They do have Otto Sindel, which is a common maker. What's unusual about this one, this is a correct early proof for 1935. This, you can barely see it, but that is under magnification. It's 1935. Now, the 35 holster is one of the rarest holsters to find in terms of dated holsters. This is one of the rarest ones. The holster by itself can sell for $1,500 because evidently they made way too many in 1934 for the K-8 Luger. They must have made way too many because there's a lot of 34s, and then in 35 they didn't need very many, and they picked up production in 36. So in 1935, and I did look for, is this overstamped? Did somebody try to fake the numbering? And when you open up inside, you can see it is an early variation where they have room for the cleaning rod and the tool. There's also an area for the punch. The punch is missing, the cleaning rod is missing, but the tool is here. Now, you may not be able to see it. That's all early configuration for a G-date. It's very, very light strike, which is one of the reasons I know it's real. The fake ones often have deep strikes. This is very, very light, very, very faint, but it is a 154, which is an early proof for the G date, and we'll look. If you want to know what it looks about like this. That early proof is the W154. It's pretty rare, and again, early G date. Next is the S92, and then a test firing proof. You have a proof here. You have halos here. So G date, by the way, is 1935. It was Hitler's, or the Nazi party, the Nazi buildup of the German army. They weren't allowed to make guns between the wars, and now Hitler comes to power, so he tries to hide it. So he uses a code for Mauser, S42. That was the Mauser code in 1934, 1935, into 1936. And then he uses the G date, which is code for 1935. K date, 1934. This went to the German army before World War II broke out. Well, let's take a look. You can see these straps are absolutely beautiful, front and back. Again, I'm catching the cloth on these diamonds. They're so sharp, and they are correct for the gun. And I got 6214. The proof mark right there is once again 154. So you can see that is not a matching magazine. However, it is 154, which is early enough to fit with the gun and early enough to match the tool. Overall, just a really nice G date. Getting harder to find. They did make quite a few in the 1935, but still, they're hard to find in this condition because many of them went to the Eastern Front and were in the snow and the mud and don't look like this anymore. It has an excellent bore as well. Okay, just because we're equal opportunity offenders, whenever you are a collector of military items, it's frequent to offend people. I went out to dinner with our neighbors. They invited us out, and they asked me that dreaded question, so what do you do for a living? I try to dance around it, but a lot of people don't like it. They say, I sell military collectibles, mostly guns. So this is a Japanese Type 14, Japanese Nambu. I was about to say Japanese Luger, but it was basically the Japanese Luger. However, it is called the Nambu Type 14. Again, beautiful holster. This is leather. Later, they came out with a canvas holster. This is a leather holster in excellent condition. You can see the brass fittings, and the strap being intact is very unusual and adds quite a bit of value, as well as the original lanyard, and that comes with it. Obviously, this is supposed to go on the gun, but they kept it together by tying it on here. It's really hard to get onto the back of the gun itself. Let's pull this open, and I like to look inside in case there's any surprises. In this case, there's no surprise in here. Sometimes I'll see a box of ammo or just loose rounds. There's often a firing pin, a spare firing pin in there. But what we do find in this section is you have a second magazine, and see this right here? This is the cleaning rod. Now, the cleaning rod sells for $100, $150 when they're in original condition. This spare magazine would sell between $150 and $200, but in this case, it's going to sell for a lot more because it is matching to the gun. So we have the rod, we've got the leather holster. Here you can see the label with kanji writing, and evidently translated right here, 11256. And here you can see 11256. So a matching holster, matching magazine, and you can see the date. That's November of 43. It's got still has the straw small parts, and it has the larger trigger guard, and that was the smaller trigger guard with the winter gloves. They had a hard time. They'll tell you on the internet, don't ever put your finger in there. Don't do it, because people say the gun will magically go off, so we'll be careful not to do that. The condition of this is way better than what we usually see. You can see the front straps have almost no wear. You see some machining issue here, but almost no wear here, almost no wear here. Beautiful gun. Pull it back like that to cock it. It stays back, and then drop it back down again. And we'll take a look at the magazines, because we know that it ended in 256. So there you see 256 number 1 mag, 256 number 2 mag. So we have a matching holster, the strap, the lanyard, beautiful gun in like 97, 98%, a great rig, and a Japanese collector's dream in terms of finding a rig in this condition. Okay, here's the next one. It just looks like a standard Mauser HSC, but there's one little marking I wanted to point out because it does add value. The only reason I look for this marking, well, I'll go ahead and solve the mystery. That little marking is an extra test eagle. It's basically an eagle with a swastika, but all you can see is, again, a little squiggly line. But the reason I look for that is because this is so early. If you look at the serial number, they started at 700,000, and the first couple thousand were low grip screws. Here's a picture of the low grip screw. And then because they split down here, they decided it wasn't a very good design, so they moved it to the standard middle of the grip screw. And so this is very, very early, and because it's real early, I thought, oh, it's very early, and it is Eagle 655, that's the Mauser Inspector. Eagle 655 right here, and because it's so early, I said I'll bet it has the additional test proof right here, and it does. You can see the high polish finish. Both sides, there's a little bit of wear. That's holster wear going in and out of the holster, kind of wore it off. There's another proof mark here, and there's usually a proof mark right at the end, and there it be. Oh, it be. Now, easy to take apart. I just pull the hammer, click the safety, there's a little button right there, push that forward. Look at that. Holy potato chips. There you go. You can see inside there, 144. That's the locking block and the barrel, marked 144. And that is supposed to match right there, and it does. Okay, next, look at this little baby. Now, I did show this in the earlier video, but I didn't show a lot of detail, and I also wanted to make sure I made this available to a collector. But this is a Model 9, Walther Model 9, which is engraved, ivory grips. It's a later variation because it has the screw here. Before that, they just had two little tines that you would turn, and kind of a pain in the neck to take on and off. So this is late in production, and I believe factory engraved. It looks factory engraved to me, and just a cute little baby gun with a cute little holster, and it works like this. Cock it, and the indicator pin will indicate that it's loaded, and this is 25 caliber. And yes, we already checked it several times to make sure it's not loaded, so people don't have to scold me about that. And you fire it by just pushing. Now, it's easy to take apart. I'm not going to do it because the pieces in there are really tiny. But see that little lever there? You just pull that up, and the back end comes off, and then the slide comes off the gun. The ivory grips alone are quite valuable. Even the screw head is engraved, and you can see the escutcheons around it are engraved. So it's beautifully done. Now let's take a look at the final one. We go from this intricate, engraved, beautiful German pistol to this American CIA operation. Actually, it was the OSS, Office of Strategic Services. This is the Liberator. Most of you know about the Liberator. No markings at all on this one. This bottom plate has been replaced because it looks brand new, and they do fall off and get lost. But everything else about this looks original. It's got a little bit of corrosion. But this is, other than this being replaced, this is about as nice as they come. And I see these sell on auction for a couple $1,000s. We're not asking that much, but it's pretty easy to put your .45 caliber in there. There's no rifling in there. You can't see it, but it's not meant for distance target shooting. It's meant for walking up, putting it in the back of somebody's, well, we won't talk about that, because that gets my neighbors upset. Close it down, pop it in there, and you use it to take somebody else's weapon when they're standing guard. That's how it fires. Hey, that was pretty quick, and I have 6 more rigs to bring you tomorrow. Similar to these, 6 rigs. I'll send them tomorrow. That'll be part 3 of Show of Shows. And I forgot to mention, I already showed this in the video about cutaways. This is a Liberator. Now, this is a post-war replica. but it is exactly the same as the originals, and this cutaway, it shows you how the parts work. You can put it on display, it shows how it works, and you kind of get an idea of that. But again, this is a replica which we can sell for about $450. I'll pull the trigger and we'll watch it work. Hey, thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, and tomorrow, 6 more.